Good morning, and welcome to Gold Goats and Guns. My name's Tom Luongo. What I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to talk to you about making cheese. Okay, and cheese is really actually not terribly difficult to make. It just takes time and attention. And if you can hear off in the distance, you can hear where all cheese starts, and that is it starts with my goats. All right, so we're going to go grab a goat, and we're going to bring her onto the stand, and we're going to milk her. And then from there, we're going to use the milk to turn around and make some high-quality cheese. All right? Oh, here we go. This is Sapphire, and the little one over here yelling at me saying, I'm hungry. That's Sikozu, but this is Sapphire. She's going to be one of the ones we milked this morning. Along with her, that's Jewel. And then way back in the building over there is Graza. She's going to get milked too. This big one right here, big red one, is JJ, and JJ is retired. But she used to be my big milker. And these girls right now are really hungry, and they want their breakfast. So it's time for them to get breakfast. So here you see, this is Sappy. She's on the stand. I've already wiped down her udder, right? So to clean her off before I milk her, I've got a solution of bleach and soap up there, a very mild solution of that. And I wipe down her udder so that it doesn't, we get rid of all the sand and the grass and the dirt and, frankly, the poop off of her udder, so that the milk that we collect is clean, and then we're going to go from there. I need 2 hands to milk, so I can't actually show you what it's like to milk a goat this morning. We'll do that in another video, but I'm going to pop out and go milk my girl before she gets done, and then says, hey, I'm out of food and I want more. So I've already milked Snappy, and she's just finishing up her breakfast, and she's a slow eater, and she's very meticulous. She won't let anything go to waste. But just wanted a quick note about milking these girls. She gave me close to 6 cups this morning, about 1.5 quarts, and that's good. And she was drifting down to about 1 quart in the morning. And I've got Lespedeza pellets from a vendor up in Georgia. And Lespedeza is the only plant that we know of that naturally helps them defend against the barber pole worm, and is also good goat feed. It's like a good mid-protein, high calcium feed. And so her productions, I've already seen in like 3 days, her production's taken off really nicely. So she was starting to pick up worm load with all of the rain that we've had for the last couple of weeks. And that's a good thing. So, I usually feed that out like for a month, every other month during the summertime. And that helps to keep them really healthy without me having to go to the chemical wormer on a regular basis. And so, black and white goat number 2, this is Graza. Good morning, Graza. How are you, sweetheart? All of my goats that I'm going to milk this morning are half myotonic, or half fainting goat, and half Nubian. You can tell that they've got Nubian stock in them from the big long ears, and you can tell that they're myotonics because, well, they're barrel-chested. So, to note about these guys, they're really hardy producers, and they respond really well to a kind of a high-fat, high-protein diet, and which allows me to get a really high-fat, high-protein, high-yield out of them. Their grain mix is a mix of flaked barley, alfalfa pellets, and black oil sunflower seeds. Yes, honey, I know. It's fine. There's no one's going to eat you. It's fine. Go ahead. I'm sitting here talking to you and not milking her, and she's wondering why. That's why she's not eating. One last thing to note about feed is that what's important here, why I'm going over this, is because what you feed your goats is what's going to come out in the milk, right? Your milk, what you put in is what you get out. And the flavor of your milk, the fat content and milk solids content and all of that, and the flavor itself is going to depend upon what you feed your girls. I've gone through so many things and so many different types of feed mixes. And I can tell you that what I'm doing right now, basically I have a carb, barley, I have a high protein, alfalfa, and I have a high fat and high protein here, and a very concentrated form of food, black oil sunflower seeds, which is expensive, right? But worth it, because I get a higher cheese yield per gallon, and I get better tasting cheese because, well, these girls are getting pretty much concentrated fat and protein out of the sunflower seeds, as opposed to feeding them something like rice bran, which could have arsenic in it from, rice is an accumulator of arsenic, and then that's bad for the girls and all of that stuff. So, I've just found I switched over to the sunflower seeds this summer, and I really like the results. And then supplement with some Lespedeza every once in a while. to help keep their worm load down and to bulk them up as we come into the pregnancy season. And not a bad idea. All right. And last but not least, this is Jewel. And Jewel is also half myotonic, half Fanny goat, and half Nubian. She's actually in every way, she's my best goat. She produces the best. She has the best udder, and she's the heaviest bodied, and she's the one who puts on the most weight quickly. So, and she recovers from illness really well. And she's also the one that had triplets this year that we had to assist in her birth. And Camille had to actually reach in and turn the babies herself and save her and the kids. And it was really traumatic and it was really stressful. And we're hoping that we didn't do any damage to her uterus because we really wanted her to be a kind of almost foundation stock going forward. If we decide to do this for the next 10 years, Jewel would be someone who we're interested in getting as many girl babies off of as possible. And the little Sokozu out there is her daughter. Okay? Hello. All right. And Jewel is an absolute sweetheart. Last thing to note is, so Jewel today gave me 5 cups, Graza gave me 4, and Sappy gave me 6, which is enough to make a 1-gallon batch of cheese. We're going to go inside in a couple minutes, once I put her back out into the field, and feed the kids, and I'm going to take some snapshots of the kids as well. We're going to go back inside, and I'll show you what I do next, which is actually really, really simple, and you're going to be amazed at how simple it is. But the important thing to remember here is that what you put into the goat is what you get out. And so if you put love and attention and affection and high-quality food into them, you get a high-quality milk out, and you get a lot of it. Unstressed goats are happy goats, are productive goats. And what they value is stability and consistency. And as long as they understand that they're in a safe, consistent environment because they're prey animals, then they will be happy and relaxed, and they'll put all of their energy into making milk and not into worrying about whether they're going to get killed or not. And that's really what it comes down to. And the crossing, the Nubians, which are highly bred and almost overbred for milk production, JJ out in the field has been dry for over a year. She still fills up, her udder still fills up with this kind of half-filled milk, and I have to milk her out. Half-formed milk, I have to milk her out regularly to relieve the pressure of the poor thing. She's so overbred, and that means that all that energy is not going into adding to her weight, so I can't breed her. And she's 8 now, or 7 or 8 now, and she's had a rough life, and she's pretty much retired because of it. But these half-breeds are really hardy animals, and they're hard to kill, and I would absolutely recommend for novice farmers to cross a meat breed with a high-production dairy breed, and then take those girls and milk those girls. Girls like Jewel and Sappy, I can milk them straight through for 2 years without having to freshen them, and I will get 2 to 3 quarts a day from them as long as I feed them, because they're just excellent producers. All right? All right. All that reduces down to this, right? We got about a little over a gallon of milk in the pot. This is just stainless steel stock pots, nothing to write home about. Actually, this is a really great cheese pot, though. And then all we're going to do is add starter. So, hold on just a second. So, mesophilic starter, standard kind of MM101 mesophilic starter. I get mine from thecheesemaker.com. Steve Shapson over there has really great products. I've been using them for years. You just sprinkle a bunch of stuff on top of the cheese, on the milk, and take your trusty dusty cheese spoon. Yeah, right. It's just a spoon. Mix it in. Okay. Most recipes will tell you that you let this bloom for half an hour or so. I usually go 3 hours simply because I'm busy and it doesn't matter, and I like my cheese to have a lot of flavor. And so the longer you can let this bloom, well, the more flavor your cheese will have. All right. So that's it. If you wanted to make a sharp cheese like a feta or maybe even a Parmesan, you'd add a little lipase at this point, and the lipase is an enzyme that will help break down other sugars and create other flavors while it's working alongside the bacteria. So this is going to sit for about 3 hours, and then I'm going to come back and add rennet, and then wait another half an hour, and then we'll go from there. But this is all we do right now. All right, hours, and now the cheese is ready to have rennet added to it. So rennet's an enzyme that helps to break down the coagulate the proteins. And so we add about 10 drops of rennet. And a lot of people say you shouldn't add it directly like this, that you should mix it with water and then mix it in. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter. So let me get a spoon. Hold on just a second. Here, spoon. And then you mix. Make sure that it's mixed up real good. And we get a nice, even curd. What will happen now is that this will coagulate the proteins, separate them away, and then cut it, and then we'll cook it, and that'll be that. So that's the next phase of the process. This will take about a half an hour for the cheese to set up, right? Back in 30 minutes. About 35 or 40 minutes or so since I added the rennet, and now the cheese is ready to cut and cook. And if you look closely, you can see how it's started to separate a little bit. You see how it jiggles as one big mass? That's it's pulled away from the bowl. That's when you know it's done. But really, it doesn't take very long. 10 drops of rennet is incredibly powerful. And so now you just take your knife where you can. Wow. Normally I do this after, like an hour or two. You just cut. You're just making big long strips. It doesn't really matter if you're even about it. Okay. It's not important because it's all going to get cut up and mashed and anything later. You'll hear, if you read recipes on the internet, it'll say things like, cut them in quarter-inch strips, and just cut it. Just cut the cheese up. And then you can, depending on what you want to do here, right, you can then just, put the lid back on it and leave it. Or, what I do now is I take a spoon, right, and cut through it laterally like this and start cutting up the curd. Okay? And you just kind of go down through it. And this way you also get to inspect the curd. You're looking for big, if you don't see any, if you see nice big solid masses like this, that's great. That means that you don't have any foreign bacteria creating pockets of CO2 in your cheese. It means your milk was nice and fresh. It means that your bowl was nice and clean. It means your hands were nice and clean. All that kind of good stuff. It's all very important. If you want good cheese, you have to, it's just like all dairy. You're working with raw dairy. You have to practice good hygiene. Before I even come over here and I work with the dairy at all, at any time, we have a spray bottle of ammonia and Dawn. It's practically straight ammonia. It's like 75% ammonia, 20% water, and like 5% Dawn. And this looks good here, right? So now that's been done. Now you can turn it on a little bit. Now you can turn on the heat. You want to raise the temperature a little bit to speed up the process. We're going to try and get it up to 78, 80, 88 or so degrees. I got this little trusty dusty thing. We're at 80 degrees. All right, that's not good. That's not nearly high enough. So we're going to cook. But you got to cook slowly and gently. And you can do this over a double boiler and raise the temperature like, a lot of recipes say like 1 degree every 5 minutes. It doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're really looking for consistency, yes. But this is we're doing what I call farmhouse cheese. And it's pretty much just a standard cheese recipe. And however you manipulate it is what you're going to get. And, at the end of the day, if you do roughly the same thing and bring the curd to the same temperature each time, then, you're going to get roughly the same cheese every time. But it's going to be variations. And so, we sell this stuff every once in a while at the farmer's market. And we just always sacrifice a couple of ounces from the block, cut it up into small chunks, and offer them up and say, this is today's cheese. It kind of tastes like Colby. Or this is today's cheese. It kind of tastes like a weak cheddar or whatever. And you give the people the opportunity to say, yeah, I'll buy that. And then you give them a sample, and that's that. And then they go, right? So, and then they decide to buy it off of you or not. And so I just want to get the temperature up in the high 80s. I'm looking for around 88 degrees or so. This will take a couple of minutes. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back in a couple of minutes and show you what that looks like. Okay? So now it's been a couple of minutes, and you see I've got the temperature up around 87 degrees. It's actually a little higher than that. The surface cools off really quickly. The whole mass is around 88 degrees or so. What's happening now is that you're getting separation of the whey from the curds. You can see how you got liquid here. And then we're going to drain this off as we go along, or not. Actually, I'm probably just going to let it cook in its own way for a while. And what you're doing here is you're allowing the curd to continue to your culture to continue to work on the milk and convert more and more of the proteins and sugars right into cheese, and separate that from the whey. And then the longer you do this, the drier your cheese will be. Okay, but the problem is you have to worry about your cheese becoming rubbery and hard, and then it won't pack together very well. I did a cheese last night where I had it draining over the whey in a kind of half-assed cheddaring process, and I forgot about it and went to sleep and woke up this morning and went, oh, look. And it was this big mass, and I had to cut it into very small pieces, and it's over there right now in the cheese press, and I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of it, but it's going to be very, very dry. I pulled a piece of it and I tasted it, and it was like it had almost the consistency of feta without, of course, the sharp lipase flavor, because I didn't do a lipase cheese yesterday. So that's going to be a very interesting cheese. That won't be for sale. That will be for me. And so we'll just kind of let this sit for the next 10, 15 minutes or so, and then we'll come back to it and raise the temperature a little bit more, maybe go up to as much as 90 degrees, and then let it sit, and then we'll start draining off the whey. And we'll do this for about a half an hour, 45 minutes or so. The longer you let this go, the drier your cheese will be, and the better your cheese will be, I think, because I like dry, sharp cheeses. All right, back soon. And we're back. It's been about 15 minutes or so, and you can see how things have progressed. Right? You want to get in here and stir it every once in a while, the cheese, so that it doesn't set up too big a lump too early. Right? Eventually it will, and that's actually part of what you do when you cheddar. And I've just learned how to start doing that, and it's the results of, once I actually paid attention to what people were telling me and watched some good videos on it and everything else, what I found was that it's actually really quite easy. But you can see how some of these we're starting to form some lumps, which we don't really want at this point. We really wanted to, so I should have come down here a couple minutes earlier, but, well, I was reading about how Turkey pretty much just told the U.S. to go scratch. So that was more important than the cheese. And that's the one thing about cheese making. You don't really, if you're not trying to create a specific product at the end of the day, and you're just trying to, produce a lump of something that tastes good, but is not necessarily, a particular style of cheese. Because remember, this is ultimately just a milk preservation technique that, you can, be kind of loose and goose with your process, If you want a specific thing, though, you have to be very, very careful with temperature and time and all of those things, because that's the art part of cheese making. But the gross technical part of it is pretty simple. So let's check the temperature, see where we are. 89 degrees. I told you that stuff was warmer than I thought. And that's part of the reason why this looks like it's setting up so quickly. It's 90 degrees. Goat milk, anything above like 92 or 93 degrees in the goat milk just starts to set up and seize really, really hard, really quickly. And you generally like to keep the temperature below 90, certainly below 92 degrees, 93. And really, I like to do a lot of these cheeses at between 88 and 90. And I may do this for 2 hours, right? I may come back over here every 10 or 15 minutes for 2.5 hours while I'm doing stuff all day, and just, every couple of minutes, every 15 minutes or so, come over, stir for a couple of minutes, add a little heat, just make sure that everything's good, and then, cover it back up and wait. We're going to let that go for another 15, and then I'm going to pour it off and let it drain, and then we're going to salt it, and then I'm going to hang it. Well, it's been another 15, 20 minutes, and since I have to run this afternoon, I can't sit here and play with my cheese for 3 or 4 hours. I'm going to pour this off now. What I'm showing you now, these are, we picked these up on Amazon, actually, and we use this to strain yogurt and to strain the cheese in. These are polycarbonate hotel pans, and then we drilled a bunch of holes in the bottom of it, like this, so that we can drain. And we use usually I line up with a piece of nylon or whatever and let it go through. But for the cheese, I don't actually need to do that. The chunks are large enough. I don't have to worry about them filling up or whatnot. So I'm going to pour this off now, and then we'll wait for it to drain, and then we're going to salt it, and then we're going to hang it. Okay. So big strong wrists, because, well, I milk goats. pot's been emptied, cleaned out. I cut that out, and now we're just going to do this a little bit. Spread these out, these curds out. Let them sit. Now, you could cheddar over this, right? And all cheddaring is that you sit here and you let the cheese drain over the hot whey, and that creates a nice warm environment. You cover the whole thing up, cover it with like a towel or a tea towel or whatever, and just let it sit here for like an hour while the reaction continues to go, and the cheese starts to firm up, and then you cut it in half, and you take one mat and put it on top of the other one, and you just keep doing that back and forth for a couple of hours at a high temperature, and that really firms the cheese up and dries it out. And then you come back later and you cut it up into small bits and break it up with your hands and add some salt and then stick it in your press. And if you've got a really strong press, then you can get a really nice tight cheddar. But it's that way that you can get that really dense, layered, flaky effect that you get out of a good cheddar. So all I'm going to do now is just cover this up and let that go for, I don't know, another 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'm going to salt it. And then we're going to hang it, right? All right, well, it's been a few minutes. And things have drained nicely. And so now, liberally salt your cheese. You're going to lose most of it, and you're going to lose a lot of your salt that you put in. It's going to drain out as the cheese continues to drain, but that's fine. Then, where's my big spoon? Oh, there it is. So, and then just cut it in. This cheese is very squeaky. I tasted it. That's good. So I didn't seize up too hard. And just work with it. Now, you can press your cheese, or you can hang your cheese, or you can do both. You'd have to, after you hung it, you'd have to cut it back up again and then hang it again. So I'm going to transfer this to a piece of cheesecloth, and I'm going to hang it, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then we're going to be done for the day, right?
Yeah.
All right. So here's the cheese. It's been transferred. This is just a piece of nylon or organza. It's actually wedding bale. This is our secret weapon here at my house, but draining cheese and yogurt. So most people use cheesecloth. You can if you like. This stuff, you know, before you go to work with it and you go to hang the cheese up, you soak it in some bleach water to clean it, right? I like to form it up into a ball and drain some of the whey out, right? Up into a nice tight ball. So that looks good. And we'll just wrap it up again. Let it hang. That should hang there just fine. And then also keep stuff off of it while it's hanging. Wrap it so that flies or anything else that may be hanging around your house can't get to it. There you go. All right. And then you hang it for 24 hours. You let it go. And so now you just ignore it. Now, if this is a light paste cheese, it'll get stinkier, and you'll know it's done when your whole house smells like, well, a fart. All right. Talk to you soon. Hi. All right. So after 24 hours of it hanging, this is what the cheese looks like. You got a big ball. This flat part here, like cut it, just taste it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut it up and into chunks. This is what you would normally do to make feta. Okay. And I'm going to cut it up into chunks. I'm going to salt it. I'm going to let it sit. This is not a light paste cheese, so it's not going to be truly feta. But what we did yesterday left me with a cheese that wasn't very salty. And so I'm going to salt it and get some salt into it and dry it out a little bit more. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so here we go. So basically, we just cut it up into big chunks. Right? And then put it in these Tupperware containers. Salt it. It's really just that simple. And we'll let this go for a day or two like you normally would with a feta. You've got to dry the curd out, right? By throwing salt over it. The salt will leach out more of the whey. And you salt liberally. And this is kosher salt. You don't want to use iodized salt here. You only want to use kosher salt or non-iodized salt. Even sea salt's not really what you want to use here. Okay. Lid. And these, you don't want to really use chunky salt either. You want to use this kind of medium grade salt. Really? Well, you can use fine salt. It's fine. I don't mind. You just need to use a lot of it. So you shake it up, you cover everything. And what will happen is over the course of a day or two that you'll get the whey will you'll get more whey pulled out. Cheese will firm up really hard, much harder than it is currently. It's right now it's kind of squeaky and tasteless. And then in a couple more days, it'll still add flavor over time because the bacteria are still active, and they'll continue to add flavor as the cheese ages. And that's what aging does, is it brings out more flavor. So we're going to do this and for a day or two, and then we're going to cut it up into smaller chunks, and we're going to brine it like we would a feta, though it's not going to quite be feta. It'll be, a mild feta. Okay? That's what we're going to do. All right. Okay, it's been a couple of days, and the cheese has had a chance to firm up, and you can see how wet all this is. I've actually drained off some of the whey that this is already produced already, but the salt has really toughened up this cheese. It's no longer nearly as fluby, and it's not even squeaky. Young cheese tends to be squeaky. You can see the whey that's been pulled out, and then we also have this one, and here I have actually more whey, but same thing. This cheese is now almost crumbly. If you were to pull it apart, it would be crumbly. We're nearly to the point where this would be considered feta. Like I said from the beginning, though, because I didn't add any lipase, this isn't really feta. But it's pretty much all the steps that we've gone through here are pretty much the same as you would making feta cheese. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut these up into little chunks, and I'm going to make a brine out of kosher salt with a little bit of calcium chloride, because the calcium chloride keeps the cheese from going soft. I've made feta a few times, and with the temperatures that I cook the cheese at, it's not high enough for the cheese to maintain its stability, and it just tends to dissolve in the brine over the course of the aging process. Looking at 2 or 3 weeks that you're going to age this before you can eat it. Or you can eat it now, but it's better if you let it age a couple of weeks in the brine. So all you do is just cut it up into chunks like you would normally do for feta. Right? And then we're going to fill these things up. And I'll continue talking about the process. And so, yeah, the calcium chloride is just there to keep the cheese from going soft and fluby. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't go bad. It's not like it's just, it's unappetizing. It's certainly edible. And we'll finish this stuff off. We'll eat a piece. It's a little squeaky. That's good. It's picked up enough salt now. But this will be really good. In about 2 weeks, this will be a great salad cheese. You can crumble it, put it over your salads. It'll be a nice mild feta style cheese. Very salty, but it should also be nice and tough and firm, and it should be good. All right. So that's what we got. So that's what we decided. That's what I want in the end. That's what I decided to make. Like proto feta, and then from here, these are little pint deli containers. I use these, for a lot of things. But mostly I sell my yogurt this way at the farmer's market. But I also sell my regular goat cheese. So about a teaspoon of salt, or half a teaspoon of salt, to 16 ounces of. So I'm going to fill this container up. That's enough. And then just a little bit of calcium chloride. And really, as a chemist, and I am a chemist, from a chemistry standpoint, it's really what you're doing here is you're forcing the calcium equilibrium, you're forcing the calcium in the cheese to stay in the cheese and not and not leach out into the water and be replaced by the sodium, which is why the cheese falls apart. So you add a little calcium chloride, and that shifts the equilibrium around so that the cheese stays firm. And that works, right? I did this the other day for the first time, and the cheese that's about a week old, I've got in my I've got a drinks cooler for aging cheese, and that's seems to be doing really well. So we'll brine it, and we'll put these put a lid on these, and about 2 weeks from now it'll be done. It'll be ready to eat. I mean, you can eat it now, but it'll just be better in a couple of weeks. So, and then these will go into a drinks cooler at around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 weeks. Look, cheese. All right, that's one thing you could have done with it. If I had decided to not hang the cheese, if I had just decided to press it directly, let me show you. I've got a cheese over here that I'm going to go over to my refrigerator now. I've got a cheese here that I made the other day. Actually, this is the cheese that was in my press when we were doing this one, so I didn't have my press available. But you can see this is just a big block of cheese. Right, I did a cheddaring process on this. It was a lot drier and harder than my normal farmhouse cheese is. This has been drying out for a couple days in the refrigerator at low temperature, and what I'll do with this is I will coat this in coconut oil to seal it, and then I'll age this in the drinks cooler as well, wrapped in a towel, and coconut oil or butter, but coconut oil is actually better to seal the cheese if you don't have cheese wax, which is expensive. So why use cheese wax when we have coconut oil in the house to cook with? And so that's what we use. So there we are. And then I'll age this for a couple of weeks or longer, and then we'll have a nice hard crumbly cheese to do stuff with. Mostly just sit at the table and eat. All right. So that's it. That's how you make cheese. Talk to you soon. Keep your stick on the ice.